Open up something on the parasha, Parashat Toldot. I should put this. The beginning of the parasha, it opens. There was a famine in the land. In Bereshit chapter 26, the famine in the land, besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Yitzchak went to Avimelech, the king of Plishtim, to Gerar, and the Lord appeared to him and said, "Don't go down to Mitzrayim. Dwell in the land of Israel, which I shall tell you. Sojourn in the land, and I will be with you. And I will bless you," etc. Not to leave Eretz Yisrael. The question is, the rabbis ask, why is there this mention of the first famine by Abraham, which is so important? There was the first famine in the time of Abraham. So the Rambam says, Ramban, Nachmanides, because that's it was a famous thing. That was the first time ever humanity experienced this famine. Like remembering the first time that it appeared, and it was similar to the first one, the main one that we ever heard about. The Ramban isn't satisfied with that answer. How does that explains why is that so important to know? There was a famine now. It's what there was historically. He says no. The other explanation, he says, is because just like it was in Abraham, and because of that, Abraham went to Mitzrayim, went to Egypt because of the famine, and God made him a great success. Right? What happened afterwards when he went to Egypt and he became he was at the Paro, and he took Sarah, and then he returned to him. He became very famous and rich. So Ramban says that therefore Yitzchak wanted to go b'derech avotav. He wanted to go in the footsteps of his fathers. Just like after the famine, Avram went to Egypt, and Hashem worked it out that from out sprung positive things, good things. So maybe also go in the ways of my fathers. Also Rashi says that. Don't go to Egypt, Rashi says, on the words, Al Tered Mitzrayim. He has the Sheyad Datol Aredet Mitzrayim, because he wanted to go to Egypt. Kamo Shirad Avi B'Meira, just like his father went out in the time of famine. And therefore Hashem says to him, don't go. Why not go? Avram went because of the famine. Why Yitzchak can't go? Because you know the famous there, Chazal say, and Rashi brings down, he Olat Tmima, he's a pure offering. You were almost offered, you can't stand any impurity. You have to remain pure, not to leave the land of Israel. Avram Avinu was already outside of Israel. What does that say? Level of purity. There's rabbis talk. There's a book, Chesed Avraham. The yard site was not too long ago, 2 weeks ago. The Avram Azulai, the great-grandfather, the Chida, of Chaim Yosef David Azulai. Anyway, living in Hebron, buried in Hebron. A book of Kabbalah, you could say, about the deeper significance of Eretz Yisrael, and a lot of interesting, amazing information. Each paragraph starts with Da, you should know. No proofs, this is more of these, call it insights from above. The Da, you should know, these are the facts. And he talks to different levels of the people. Someone who was outside of Israel, lived outside and buried outside. Someone that was born outside, came to Eretz Yisrael and buried here, died here. Again, higher and higher levels until the person who was born here, lived here, and buried here. That's high. So Yitzchak was pure, had to remain pure, not to leave Eretz Yisrael. Also on the grave of Rav Chalap, of Yaakov Moshe Chalap, a student of Rav Kook, one of the main big students of Rav Kook. On his grave, it says, "Lo tam chutz." He never tasted the taste of chutzlaretz, of the air of chutzlaretz. Never left Eretz Yisrael. He didn't leave Yerushalayim that much. Just when Rav Kook was in Yafo, I think he went out, to go see Rav Kook. Otherwise, he didn't leave Yerushalayim even. All the more so not to leave Eretz Yisrael. But nevertheless, so Yitzchak can't go. Hashem says you can't leave Eretz Yisrael. But the verse goes on that I read, but God spoke to him, or appeared to him. Hashem explains that this is the proof, he says, irrefutable proof. The value of building Eretz Yisrael not only without intentions, with negative intentions, whatever. Building the vehicle, what we're saying here, building the vehicle enables the Shekhinah. That doesn't justify, doesn't mean it's good to have bad intentions. But that won't last. That we'll see the next source, maybe we'll learn now, what I plan to share with you today, something from Rav Kook. But to understand what's taking place here, what God is doing, it comes in stages, as we've seen over and over again. It's not all perfect and holy and righteous at the beginning. But what's taking place is the return of the Shekhinah, yes. First to build the building, the body, as we've seen. the physical and then the spiritual. So let's go on to what I was planning to do and share with you. Something Rav Kook. We've been doing a few sources we've done until now, but so one more of Rav Kook, of seeing what we spoke about, seeing the inner source of this national awakening. In other words, on the surface, it's a secular movement, like everyone else, for different secular reasons, but we're trying to learn how to see the hand of God, seeing history from the roots above, as Rav Tzuda used to say, how to see the world from the roots above, not just from the newspaper level, what's going on day by day, but there's something inside pushing and developing and growing here, as we repeat over and over again, from Tractate Tamid, who is the wise? He that sees the nolad. Ezu chacham ro'et nolad. He sees what is growing, what is developing, what is pushing here. The outside, you see shell, bitter shell, whatever we mentioned, right? The rabbis say the fruit, the shell precedes the fruit. So all you see is the shell. But if those who see the inside, we mentioned Rabbi Akiva vision, that sees the temple destruction, and he sees what's coming out of it. He sees the moment, but he sees beyond that. So here's another example I want to share with you of this vision, of this perspective, of this spiritual diagnosis of what is really taking place, of the national awakening, of the Jews coming back to the land, dedication and devotion. But it's not religious, it's not, even in the name of anti-religion, etc. So we'll do this quickly, time is left. This is from, as you see, Orot Eretz Yisrael, chapter 8, first section of Orot. It's called it's divided by different sections. There's Eretz Yisrael, there's Milchama, war, Israel's Renaissance. Anyway, there's different sections in Orot. This is from chapter 8 in Orot Eretz Yisrael. Within the inner heart, in its pure and holy chambers, within the inner dimension. It's not talking about what's on the surface, what's on the behavioral level, but there's an inner dimension. The Israeli flame increases. This inner, call it this divine dimension, this, we'll see later, the cleavage, what he says here, demanding, what is this inner light? Demands the strong, brave, constant connection of life to all of the mitzvot of Hashem. There's this inner dimension of the Jewish people that desires this burning flame that wants Torah, mitzvot, and all that goes with it, the nation of Israel, the land, to manifest God's name in the world. You don't see that. In other words, if you ask to take a survey, I don't know if everyone will say, yes, that's what I want. But here we're talking about the inner heart, this pure holy chamber, the neshama, the segula, what the rabbis call the segula, the inner divine, immutable side of the Jewish people, the collective soul. That Israeli flame increases, demanding the strong, brave, constant connection of life to all of the mitzvot, to pour the Spirit of God, this divine ideal, this light, the full all-encompassing Spirit of Israel that fills all the vaults of the soul into all it, what? To pour that light into what? Into all of its many unique vessels. The 613 mitzvot, we just mentioned before. These are the vessels that receive, enable the connection, that abstract, call it the divine, into this world. And that's our goal, as we said, to link the spiritual to the fine, in other words, to the material, to connect them all. They become one and the same. They become one continuum from the spiritual, from the abstract, so to speak, down to the practical real. And it's all holy. It's all one continuum of goodness, of godliness, of life becomes so different. Like I said, it's so full of light, of energy, of holiness, of morality. It's a different life level. And that's the inner desire of Am Yisrael's soul, to pour that divine Spirit into all the vessels, to express the full Israeli expression in its complete practical, right, the behavior and the idealized form. And now he says there's different levels of that flame. There are those that have the sparks that flash more brightly in the hearts of the tzaddikim. The righteous, you see it clearly. They do the mitzvot, they're religious, so to speak. So you see there the flame, you see it in practice, on their behavior. You see they're doing the mitzvot. The burning of holy fire blazes and rises up. In the heart of all of the nation, it continues to burn from the days of yore. There's this inner fire, like the verse in Vayikra chapter 6. A fire will constantly be burnt upon the altar. It shall not be extinguished. Like this metaphor, so to speak, of the internal fire that is burning in the Jewish people. The search for the divine. That's deep down. Like now we're approaching Hanukkah next month. That the Greeks managed to defile all the oils in the temple. And Kook explains, and again, in Ayah, the commentary on the Gemara and Shabbat, the defining all the oil represents the wisdom, the culture, the Torah, our spiritual concepts. They managed to defile all that, right? The Jews, the Hellenists, they went after this amazing new, enlightened culture. But what happened in the end? where did the victory come from, spring from?
Maccabees.
Right, but what didn't they defy? What couldn't they reach? There's a level they couldn't reach that remained. In the Holy of Holies, what did they find? Right, the Pachkana, a small little vessel of the holy, the king, the high priest. Now there's a level, and we'll see maybe in the Maharal, if you could look it up, you should read the mitzvah candle, I think you have here, on Hanukkah. He elaborates on this. We'll see it maybe towards Hanukkah. But just to say quickly, how there's an inner level that they can't reach, they can't defile. On the surface, the behavioral, the conscious level, the cultural level, it seems that, you see, they defiled it all. But there's one level underneath the surface, or I would say above the surface, the superconscious level, the neshama level, that they can't reach. The roots of Am Yisrael, this inner, holy, pure and holy chambers, that they can't reach. That's symbolized by that small pach. And from there, that had the power to emerge and rekindle, and then the whole nation came back, whatever, like to the Maccabim, etc., Hashmonaim. But that rekindled Am Yisrael, the history, through the victory of those few, that small group that ultimately reignited the inner flame that was there always, that inner flame that they can't quench. It's not some man-made thing. That's the divine essence of the Jewish people. That's what makes us eternal. It's not our choosing and wanting, and we're human beings. But our neshama is called from this level of beyond this world. Like I said, it comes into this world to raise this world, to connect this world to something much greater. But it comes into this world, and you can defile what's in this world. The Jews can be evil and corrupt, and then etc., etc. But there's an inner flame. There's this inner skula, there's this inner neshama, the flask of the Kohen Gadol that cannot be contaminated. And from that, it doesn't make sense that it lit for what? It should have lit for 1 day. It was enough for 1 day, it lasted for 8. In other words, again, the Maharal explains 8 is beyond nature, right? The numerical significance, and Maharal elaborates on that the 8 is 6 is all the 6 dimensions, right, of the 3-dimensional world. And the inner, the 7 and the 8 is beyond nature. So the flask lasted for 8 days. This oil was, again, this inner flask that seemingly on the practical level, what can it do? What can these small minority? But that's the neshama. That neshama level is not measured by the quantity. That's the quality level, and that has the power to re-emerge and rekindle all. And that's what's constantly in the heart on the Jewish people. And in the heart, line number 11, and in the hearts of all the empty ones, he's using a term here that the rabbis call the rekanim. It says the Gemara says in the Alta Midrash and Brachot in 57 that the empty Jews are full of mitzvot. So the rabbi asked Rav Kook, Rav Tzuda, his son, Rav Kook's, Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook's son. It says the Rikanim shebehem alei mitzvot, the Jews, that the empty ones are full of mitzvot like a rimon, like a pomegranate. Yeah. So Rav Tzuda explained a novel explanation. What do you mean it's empty? When they're empty and they're full. They're empty of mitzvot and they're full of mitzvot. They're full of mitzvot like a rimon. He says, no, like a rimon. A rimon, as opposed to other fruits that you have the fruit and you have the pits, the seed. Yep. Here, the rimon, the seeds are the fruit. That's the essence. The Jewish people, the inner essence, that's the true essence. That we're full. That even the Jews that you see on the external that are seemingly empty of mitzvot, they're full. They're full where? On the essential level. Their essence is the fruits, the seeds, the inner, the essence is the same as the fruit. The Jewish people is not something external. The mitzvot aren't something external. That's our essence. We have free will. Externally, you could not do or yes do, but the essence remains. Like the rimon, that its inner essence is the seed is the fruit. It's one and the same. So nevertheless, he uses this term. In the hearts of the empty ones and in the hearts of all of the sinners of Israel, the fire burns and blazes. Where? We don't see the mitzvot. In the most inward depths. There it's more hidden and concealed. Like I said, it's inside, but that's their essence. And in the nation in its entirety, now look what he writes here. The emphasis is mine here. All of the desire for freedom and all of the yearning for life, all of the yearning for life of the klal, of nation of Israel, the desire to build a nation, right? The national awakening, national consciousness, we want to be a nation and strong and dedication, all that. Where does that come from? The life of the klal, of the individual, all of the hope for redemption. Where do they emanate from? Only from the source of this inner spring of life do they flow. In order to live Israeli life in its fullest, without contradiction or limitation. The full Torah and mitzvot of holiness, to manifest God's name in the world, in other words, that's the inner desire for our redemption. They can give explanations. I'm coming back to visit my grandmother. I'm coming back to run away from persecutions in the pogroms or Holocaust. I'm coming back for historical, emotional reasons, whatever. I'm coming back. I don't know. I even know it's Israel. I landed here and whatever. Those are all the external reasons that can be expressed. Rav Kook here is talking about, again, the neshama. We mentioned there's the modern psychology, right? Not so modern already. There's the conscious level, what people say and understand, what they're doing, explaining their actions, and Freud tells us that there's a subconscious level. People are doing things with inner motivations, inner drives, they're not even aware of from within. So here also, I think Carl Jung, whatever, there's also the superconscious. So there's a I'll call it the superconscious, the collective soul level, the roots of our nation, of each one of us has our collective roots, our inner, what we're talking about here, this divine, the holy inner chambers, and the neshama, that the immutable divine side of us. As Rav Kook explained, we have to get to that. We did it once, a few times. A famous important letter of Rav Kook in the Igrot Ariyah, the letters of Rav Kook, letter Takana, Tav Kuf Nun Hey, which is letter 555. And there he delineates this understanding of the nation of Israel having two sides, two aspects. Very quickly, one is, I'll call it the immutable divine aspect, and one is the free will, the human, the subjective. Each one of us that decide has free will. In other words, we mentioned there's a lot of sources, the Maharal in chapter 11 and Netzach Yisrael and the Sfat Emet, others, how there's two aspects. We have this collective immutable soul, that this divine creation, like I always bring to you, like Rav Tziyuda used to always say to us, Am zu yetzarti li tilati yitzapeh, right? Yeshayahu 43:21. This nation have I created unto me. This is the divine creation, this neshama, this spiritual essence, this content. And neshama isn't something abstract. It's a real, that's the more real than the physical. That's what's eternal. That's what's the true essence. Like what we think of here, like Plato, right? The world, we live in the world of shadows. This is not the real, the essence is the eternal, that's the real thing. Nevertheless, that there's a divine essence of the Jewish people, that content of godliness, of holiness, they call it the concentration or whatever, the concentrated form of the divine ideal that God has in mind for creation. And then there's the free will, it's the individual level, the free will level of what we do with that, how much you express that. And you're a human being. You can act like a dog, walk on four, whatever you could, but there's an inner essence, there's a reality of you're a human being. That you have free will to live up to that, express that or not. It's a shame that you don't. You have such a potential, you have such energy, you have such a blessing to bring to the world, and you want to, I think you're a dog and you want to say that. I mean, not to say that, but that's where free will comes in. But nevertheless, there's the essence. That's what the rabbis, Rav Kook in this letter calls it the skula. And there's the bechira, the free will level. The objective and subjective, you want Kantian term, whatever, subjective and objective. Maharal calls it the holiness of the nation as opposed to the holiness of the individual. So here we're talking about this inner, this content, the collective level. That is the source. That's the superconscious level. That is what's the roots for the yearning for life of the nation coming back. What's pushing now, in other words, is the neshama, this inner neshama, this divine ideal for creation, this divine plan is now demanding its expression. That manifests itself in history. The Jews are waking up to want to come back to the land. And again, each one giving according to their free will level of their own explanations of why I'm coming back. But here we're talking about the spiritual diagnosis. What's really taking place is this inner neshama. This, call it the Shekhinah, the divine presence, the roots of Am Yisrael. That's what the rabbis call the Shekhinah, the supernal roots of the collective of the Jewish people. That is now demanding its expression. But as we've seen, it comes back in stages. The manifestation, like a baby, the neshama is here from day one. But now the body develops more and more, motor development and psychology, until more and more the body is strong, and then the more the spiritual, right? Bar mitzvah, now you start doing the mitzvot. What, you weren't Jewish until then? No, but there's levels of first building the container, building the body, building the receptacle, and can house and express fully that bigger spiritual ideal. But the ideal is revealed at the end, like we say on Friday night in L'Chadodi. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. In English, quickly, last in deed, first in thought. In other words, the divine, the original ideal, reveals itself chronologically at the end. Like it's this unfolding, you have this little seed, in this carpet, and you unroll it. Throughout history, it's this unfolding of more and more preparing the world to receive this big light. It needs a lot of preparation. It's not a small thing. It's so great. It's so lofty. It needs a very strong receptacle, history with all the ins and outs and all the ups and downs and all the intrigues and the vicissitudes of life, of history, the atheism, heresy. All these things are part of this building process to bring about the ability to fully express this high goal. But that's what's taking place now. The neshama now, the divine ideal is now demanding its expression. That's what's taking place. And again, all of the desire for freedom, of coming back to the land, to the nation, nationalism, etc., the hope for redemption, only from the source of this inner spring of life do they flow. Again, what do you mean, Rav Kook? What are you talking about? Take a vote, take a census. What do you call it? Take a poll. The people was, I'm coming back to manifest God's name in the world, to bring holiness to the world. I'm coming back for what I mentioned before, different reasons, everyone has their own reasons. Well, he wasn't in touch with the world? No, he was in touch with the real world, like I said, the inner vision, Rabbi Kiva vision. The Izu Chacham, who is the why that sees the inner, what's nolat, what's pushing here, what's really behind this, the spiritual diagnosis of what's taking place, or the super conscious level. He's aware of the inner, that the people themselves are not aware of the source. They won't say this is the source. They're not aware of it yet. The child isn't aware he has a neshama, so he doesn't have a neshama. Like I mentioned last week, they take a vote. Is there God? No, there's no God. So there's no God because the popular opinion is there's no. And it doesn't change the reality. What's pushing here is this absolute goal. Right? Rukuk is revealing to us, so to speak, the secret, the inner dimension of the inner source of this national awakening. But let's go on and try to finish it today. This is the yearning for the land of Israel, the land of Kedusha, the land of Hashem, where all the mitzvot are revealed. This is the place where all the mitzvot can be revealed in their fullness, as we've seen before, right? The book of Dvarim, right? Over and over again. These are the commandments you should keep in the land, over and over. Lots to talk about, but line number and this is yearning to reveal the special quality of the Spirit of God, of raising one's head in the Spirit of God. This is what activates everyone's hearts. This is really behind the scene. Let's skip now to line number 30. So it seems like Rav Kook, again, is out of touch with reality. He's not aware of the polls, what people are saying, what people are thinking, what they're not where he's at. You're some mystic and thinking it's all some mystical God's plan for history. These are secular people, anti-religious people that are coming to make a state like everywhere else and want nothing to do with neshama, with God, with Shekhinah, nothing. So if it be, Rav Kook is aware of this. In other words, he's well aware of the outside. We mentioned Rabbi Kiva, that he sees the destruction like the other rabbis, and they're crying and he's laughing because he sees what they see. He says he rents his garments. He sees the momentary destruction, but he sees what they don't see. He sees what comes out of it, what's brewing here, what's developing. If it be a wonder in the eyes of all those who stand at a distance, those who can't see the inner dimension, they see only the newspaper level, what's going on. They take the statistics, whatever the polls of the day. So they say, what are you talking about? How is it possible that there will be the spirit of life? What's the Spirit of God that you mentioned over and over again? The Spirit of life that mentioned in Yechezkel 37, right? I'll put my Spirit in you and you shall live, right? The redemption process there, how the body is coming back, and then I'll put my Spirit of life in you and you shall live. The Spirit of God, it says that's the Spirit that is this moving, activating force from within, this neshama, the super concept, whatever words you want to use. The Shekhinah is now pushing to demand its expression. So how is it possible that the Spirit of life, with its inner force and all of the spirits you're talking about that are even far from possessing faith? In other words, you're talking about their desire to come back to Torah, mitzvot, the full manifestation of godliness and holiness in this world with all the practical manifestations of mitzvot. He says they're even far from the faith, of even a general belief in God. You're talking about the mitzvot. And you're saying that this will beat the Spirit of life, not only to a general closeness to God, of a desire, we believe in God, a connection, but to the true life of Israel, of the Torah, the mitzvot, to the framework of the mitzvot in form and idea, in song and in action, the full fulfillment of Torah. What are you talking about? You're not in touch with reality. It's a wonder. How can you talk about, of course, saying that this is that there's a spirit of life that wishes to get not only close to God, but to the Torah and mitzvot, when what we see in front of us is there even far from the basic, even emunah, not to talk about practice of mitzvot. So to all those have a wonder, who those stand at a distance, who don't see the inner level, line number 34, it will not be wondrous in the eyes of all those who are attached to the depths of their spirit, to the depths of Knesset Yisrael. Right, Knesset Yisrael, we said that the Shekhinah, the divine inner essence, and who know of its wondrous skulot. Like I said before, the skulah, the inner dimension. Those who are fixed and focused only on the outer side, the behavioral level, they'll be at awe. What are you talking about? Or more likely that they'll be against this whole process. We're waiting for God. This is a secular movement, anti-religious movement. They don't know what you're talking about, how you talk about anything spiritual. What are you trying to infuse any spiritual significance in the secular movement? What are you trying? You're not in the. It's phony. It's fake. It's just trying to give some religious significance to a totally human, man-made secular process. No, in the eyes of those who are far away, only see the external. That's what we said, right? What did we say? Tikkun Zohar. That the rabbis, one of the keys they gave us understanding the process from the Tikkun Zohar, right? Not something new. That a generation of the Mashiach will be good on the inside and evil on the outside. Evil behavior, external level, will be indeed not proper. No, so that's something, get rid of it. Like, remember we said about the fruit, there's a shell. So get rid of the whole thing. No, inside there's an inner good. And we explain why. If it's so good on the inside, why are they rebelling against the outside? Because of the way they understood or misunderstood Torah, seeing it as against life and against vitality. Want to be a nation alive, and you're telling me religious is against all that. It's either one or the other. Not understanding that Torah is what gives life and more life. That's their misconception. But that's why, nevertheless, there's inner good that wants more than what they find in the Torah that they're exposed to, unfortunately. But what's true is that there's this inner level, this inner neshama is pushing, is developing, is wanting to come to expression, in spite of this inner outside negative level, external facade. So if those who stand at a distance, they only see the outside, they see no good, nothing, any how do you say, redeeming quality of redemption here. It's all secular, judging by the newspaper, the external facade. But it won't be wonder of seeing how this is, yes, this whole process is to come back to the name of God in its fullness, its grandeur of prophecy, returning to levels of the more we've had ever before. Where do you see that? It's not wondrous to those who are attached to the depth of Knesset Israel, to the inner dimension, and they see how that inner dimension is coming and demanding its expression, and understand the stages and know how to help to guide it. If you don't understand it, you'll misguide it. You'll misjudge it and may misguide it. But the more you understand, that's why we're learning this, to be those that understand and see what is taking place, what Hashem is doing, what's really taking place. Not being, how do you say, blinded by the negativity, all the darkness. Like in the time of Hanukkah, we said, how they defiled everything. Everything, all is lost. They've defiled everything, all the oils, all the culture, the Hellenists, that's it. The end of Am Yisrael, God forbid. But there's another dimension they weren't aware of, in other words, that we have to know. And the more you understand that and live that actually helps to rekindle it and light that fire on the hearts and the practice and in the conscious level of all the Jewish people. And that's what we're trying to do, to understand that, to live that, to learn that. And it's not an easy thing, because again, it's not the surface level, not what the five senses pick up. It's something much deeper and higher, and it takes study. But that's what Emunah is all about. It says in Divrei Yamim, Dat Elokei Avicha ve'avdehu. Know your God and serve Him. Not just serve God. No, I do. They tell you the God, you're going to be punished or not. There's levels of worship, etc. But the goal is to know God, the knowledge of God. It says in Yeshayahu chapter 11 about the Mashiach. And in those days, the knowledge of God will fill the earth. Will fill the earth. Everything will be, the knowledge of God will be so tangible, whatever. But the knowledge, the awareness, the understanding of the ways of God, how He works in the world, seeing Him in everything. And it's not easy to see Him in the hearts of the empty ones, and etc. What's going on in this process that we're now, especially today. We're in the depth of unbelievable spiritual crises, which is, again, part and parcel of the process. But this clarification, the part of the clarification is these crises and the anti and the trying to throw away all the shackles of what they call postmodernism and all. There's no absolute, there's no truth, there's no ideal, there's no family, in all the different things that are going on in the world and in Israel. We're always the best at everything, even the heresy and all these different movements. But it's all part of this clarification. Our goal, therefore, is to be those that can present and show and live this bigger picture that the other things will melt. Like when you have this bigger understanding, this totality, the holiness, that how all the things fit together, how it's part, then that helps to clarify to illuminate the surface that it seems to be so dark. And again, it doesn't go by the quantity. That qualitative inner essence from the pure and holy chambers, that has the ability to reignite like it did at Hanukkah. B'ezrat Hashem, we should learn and be part of that. See the final